Good evening, welcome everyone and all to ERL, to round number 5 of this Pirelli season, then in the Pirelli tier. And tonight we are joined at the circuit of Silverstone, based in the UK, at Great Britain, of course. Good evening to, obviously, Iron Kid, who's in the house. Yo, yo, yo. Good evening to you, mate. I hope you're doing well, of course, tonight, looking forward to what hopefully will be a exciting race around the Circuit of Monza. Obviously, we have had a tiny season break in between round 4 and round 5, so the drivers have obviously had a small opportunity to recharge their batteries and to obviously settle and clear their minds going into this race. So I'll quickly go through the, standings, the championship standings. Where are they? They are here. So, here we go then. So far, it is Appledorn, so far in control of this championship, with a 24-point advantage after winning 3 of the first 4 races, taking also back-to-back wins at Portugal and Belgium. Then we have Dandan in second place, with then 95 points, closely followed by Manzanot Bob in third. Ralphie currently sits 5th, and then it is Neil in 6th. Just below them, we have Charlie Harris in 6th and 7th, is Tom. Then Airman is in 8th, and then 9th is Stuart, and Lucky Egg is 10th. In the team standings, in the top 10, the current order is currently Haas, with a 25-point advantage over Kick Sauber, followed by McLaren in 3rd, then Aston Martin in 4th with 40 points behind. Red Bull currently sit then 5th, Williams in 6th, then 7th we've got Alpine, and 8th is AlphaTauri, which actually is Red Bull Visa, Cash App, or whatever they're called, RB. And then we've got Ferrari in 9th, unfortunately not a great season for them so far, with Mercedes down in 10th, fighting with Ferrari for what will be the, well, at the moment, the current wooden spoon, I suppose you can call it, or not to finish dead last. Anyway, who is about to begin their lap then here? And I believe the first car might be one of the Mercedes. It's Gavin, the first driver out. Then tonight, obviously, is on the softs. Do have a few out there on mediums, so them drivers will be going then for not the ultimate pace at the moment. So through the first few corners, through obviously Village, and then down the down the International Straight into Luffield, as Gavin takes a quite nice line through Luffield, I have to say. Reminds me of a Vettel line, that would, if I'm being honest, a V'ing off the corner. Exiting Luffield for Gavin then, as he heads then down the Hamilton Straight into what is Copse Corner, and then into a series of Maggots and Beckett's, and then Chapel and Vale. So out of then Vale, down then Stowe, over Hanger Straight up into Stowe. DRS wide open on the lap for Gavin as he heads then into what's the final corner, Club Corner. A little bit of a lock up for the Mercedes driver. Top Car Flogger actually was the first one with a 28.4, so that's the time to beat. Can Gavin beat it? Yes, he can, with a 28.485. So only 10 thousandths splitting them two. And then it is Elliott going even quicker with a 128.406. Then at the moment, Mafasa with an okay lap on his first run on mediums. Not quite competitive, as we see Appledorn, the current championship leader, demonstrating why he's the championship leader, putting his time into 28 zeros. Here comes Top House Flogger then, across the line. What can he do? Only good enough for P7 at the moment. Not quite where you'd expect a driver to be on the soft compound tyre. let's see how Manzanar Bob is getting on. Now, Manzanar Bob's been really fast, actually, this season. Just one or two events gone against him, really, you'd have to conclude. Obviously, in Austria, started on pole. Unfortunately, had that disconnection, which cost him most certainly the race win, and then after that picked up a few penalties, but now goes on to pole here at Silverstone for the time being. Obviously, is on the softest compound of all the drivers, therefore that will be giving him that little bit of aid. But having said that, there are other drivers out there on softs. So Piano Jam is going to be the next driver to come around, who is still to set a lap time. I do think there's certainly drivers who definitely can improve upon their laps, and we haven't seen the strongest of laps from the likes of Mafasa, Lange, Top House Vlogger even. So these are most definitely banker laps. Piano Jam though, 2 seconds down on currently where Manzanar Bob is at the moment. So into the final few corners for Piano Jam. Where is this going to place the Williams driver for today? As he crosses the line, goes up into 8th with a 29.3. As Morgan then comes across the line and does a 29.2. So that seems to be all the first runs at least done and out the way, as drivers, or some drivers, going out there for their outlaps now. So Charlie Harris is the next driver to start a lap here tonight. And Charlie's obviously had a few good results this season, but been a bit maybe inconsistent, up and down you could say. However, let's see if he can put that to bed today in the Sauber car as he heads then through the first few corners. Let's see how his first sector is going to stack up. Probably looking for around a 27 to a 28 in this first sector. Second sector, we're looking for a 1:03 for it to be competitive. So let's see where this lap's going to be. It's a 27.7, so it's right actually on the ballpark in terms of the money. Yeah, it's right in there. Takes a nice wide line. Again, veering off that Lovefield corner. Some drivers like to hug that inside line a bit more to keep it, well, to try and not, not losing minimum speed. Whereas other drivers like to veer off a bit more and open up the corner, so you get a better exit on the straight. Anyway, through Maggots and Beckett's into Chapel, and then out of then Chapel down the hanger straight, and middle sector was pretty decent. So it is a good lap coming together here for Charlie Harris. Certainly, I think this is going to propel him up at least into the top 2 and onto the front row for now. Takes a bit too much curb for my liking through that final corner of L1 Club, but rounds the final corner and yes, does go comfortably into P2 with a 27.5. Still a fair amount off where Manzanar Bob currently is sat, but nonetheless he is up into the top 2. So let's see who's next to do a lap. I believe it's actually going to be Hasenagel. Then in the Aston Martin, of course, does have a Red Bull behind him. Now, he could be giving the Red Bull a bit of a tow here, which, if that is the case, certainly will be helping out the Red Bull driver. Potential ultimate one-lap pace. As FCS and Shade moves himself now up into then what is third with a 27.8. So times are starting to come down thick and fast, with 8 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock remaining. So Hasenagel is going through the final couple of corners and moves himself up into then second, and Neil goes even quicker with a 27.3 to get himself up into then the top two and onto the front row. Let's see now what obviously Appledorm can do on these medium set, on the soft set of compound tyres, as we now go on board with the Haas driver. So what is the sector time looking? It's looking very good. It's 5/10 up with a 103.6. So this is certainly on the money. It's about 10th up on where Man's Not Bob lap time currently stacks. So can he find maybe a bit more time through the final few corners here, Appledorm, as he rounds the final corners now. Gonna cross the line. In the end, it's only a 1:27.3, so he lost a bit of time in the final sector, dare I say, because his middle sector was exactly the same as Man's Not Bob's. So Man's Not Bob got quite a reasonable advantage here at the moment. He's certainly got about half a second, and if he's going out for another lap, I tell you what, I wouldn't really mind calling this to be his final run when he does come around for the final time. Let's see what Dandan can do. Can Dandan get a bit closer? Currently 27.9, so he's a couple tenths down on where Charlie Harris's first sector was from earlier on in the session. So again, not quite in the same ballpark as where Man's Not Bob is. Man's Not Bob is quite further ahead in that scenario. Right now this is probably a bit closer to where Elliot's lap time is at the moment. So through then the middle sector for Dandan. Let's see what his middle sector's saying. So 103.8, still a couple tenths down on Appledorm then. So he's clawed back a little bit of time, I'd say, in the middle sector, especially closer to Charlie now. So what can he do in the final sector? Can he hook the car up? Hasn't set a lap time as of yet. And he's going to do one now. Goes up into fourth, beats Charlie Harris as he gets his lap time on the board. Now, is Man's Not Bob on a better lap? I'm not quite sure what his middle sector's saying. I'm not sure if he's even pushing anymore. We will find out now. He comes back off into the pits. So he certainly is going to go again at some point. So Top House Vlogger also into the pits. Piano Jam's just begun a new lap then here for himself. Currently on a 29.3 for himself. Let's see what he can do then in that Williams. But currently it is Man's Not Bob with a very clear advantage of over half a second at the moment to the rest of the chasing field. And Piano Jam 10th up in the first sector, almost 2 tenths in fact to the good. And does need an improvement of about 5 tenths in terms of to jump ahead of Top House Vlogger, which actually could probably get both of the Alpines here, potentially if he improves by enough. Let's see if he can do that. Through Cops he goes. Then, bit of traffic, but nicely getting out of his way, so those will not become a factor there. As he then exits, then Chapel, and is about 5 tenths up, so this is looking like a very nicely poised lap between, well, for the Williams driver. Certainly looking smooth, in control of his car, and looking also like not having any major moments. So rounds the final corner, keeps it just within the track limits, very close to probably being outside of track limits. Did that cost him a few thousandths? He moves up into 13th, but doesn't get the other Alpine of Lange, but does improve his lap time overall. Now, next up is Has Jane Nagel, who is then currently in 10th. Let's see if he can improve by any more. Currently a 10th down in the first sector, so he certainly is not improving as much as he would have probably liked. LCC here is improving by a few thousandths. So About 51 thousandths up to the good then. How about Lange? Not sure what Lange's lap time was. Going to go back to Has-Jane Angle, just see if he can improve in the middle sector. Otherwise, we'll focus on the Alpine of Lange and obviously LCC. He's actually improving in the final sector, so I'm going to stay then with this lap for the Aston Martin driver for now. Because currently he does have a chance of getting ahead of Mafasa here if he can just hook this final sector up. A little bit of a bounce over the curb, looking a little bit also shaky out of the final couple of corners, and crosses the line, doesn't improve enough to get ahead of then Mafasa. Here's LCC then in the Mercedes. Can he get ahead of Mafasa or anyone? No, but does get ahead of J.R. Morgan, so a good improvement by him. And Lange back into the pit, so something must have gone wrong on his lap then there. So here's Neil, potentially one of the pole contenders today. We are going to have to wait and see. Now, is obviously Manzanar Bob going to remain in the pits? I don't think he is. He is now on an out lap. Has left it late though, so we'll have to see if he can get round or not. With only 1 minute and 43 on the clock, I think he should just be fine, considering he's going down the Wellington Straight. So Neil, 3/10 up. So this is certainly a very good improvement, and going to be a lot closer to pole. Well, compared to previous laps that have gone by. So here comes Neil, still taking a bit too much curb for my liking into that second to final corner. Crosses the line, only manages to improve his time by about 2/10. And I do wonder, is that costing them a bit of time? I certainly think it would be, personally, because you're not going to necessarily improve your lap that much. So Elliott's down by 3/10. Let's see whether FCS and Shade is up on his lap time. And yes, indeed he is. So FCS and Shade up by about 38 thousandths at the moment. Currently in P7. So currently also the leading Ferrari as well in the current, standings, or not standings, but in the current race at the moment we've got going on here. And hopping over the curbs, and I think that may have just ruined his lap. Or has it? No, he's only 21 thousandths down, so still a chance to improve in this final sector. It still might have compromised him though, hopping over them orange sausage curbs. Again, we'll have to see what his lap time is as he crosses the line. Elliott remains then P6 for now. Still a chance for FCS and Shade to go ahead of Elliott. Doesn't improve his lap time, unfortunately for him. Here's Charlie Harris, currently 3/10 up on his own lap. So he's certainly improving. Got a good chance to jump ahead of Dandan and obviously ahead of Appledorn. Equally, for greater measure, if he can keep this pace up as he rounds in the final corner, goes 4/10 quicker and ahead of Neil, so moves himself on to the front row for now. So we got then Appledorn then going down the straight. Is he going any quicker to get himself back onto the pole, or into the pole contention? Rounds the final few corners, keeps it within the track limits. Is this going to be Appledorn onto pole? No, but does move onto the front row. Manzanar Bob also going a bit quicker. Doesn't improve his lap time in the end, so it's only Dan left who can knock Manzanar Bob off the pole. Does he? No, but does move himself into the 27.1s. So it is then Manzanar Bob, your pole sitter, by 2/10 of a second, followed by Appledorn on the front row. Two of the championship potential contenders this season, followed by Charlie Harris in third, and fourth is Dandan, and then Neil is in fifth. So, here is the grid order then for today's race. We've got Manzanar Bob on pole, followed by Appledorm in second, then Charlie Harris in third. Dan is in fourth. Then we've got Neil in fifth. Gavin Poynton is in sixth. Then it's Elliot in seventh. FCS and Shade is in ninth, and then it is, eighth, then Top Car Flogger in ninth. Mufasa in 10th, then Hasnagel in, it is 11th. Top House Vlogger is in 12th, 13th is Land, 14th Piano Jam. LCC is in 14th, and I will go through the rest of the grid. Give me just 2 seconds and a half. So the rest of the grid, to be frank, is then this, as soon as I get back up. So we got then LCC in 15th, then it is Morgan in 16th, and then it is St. Power 17th. Robbo is in 18th, and then it's Ports in 19th with no set time. So those are your drivers' grid positions for today's race then here today. And in terms of strategy, probably be a one-stop like most Grand Prix in game. Obviously, tyre wear in the game isn't quite reflective to what it would be in real life, which we're seeing actually quite a number of two-stop races this season, which is highly unusual compared to previous seasons, I would say. Anyway, here we go then. It is going to be eyes to the lights and foots to the floor. It's lights out and away we go for the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. And it is Manzanar Bob managing to get away well from pole, just about hanging on to the lead as they go through turns 1 and 2. And it was a car, I believe it was Elliot going wide, and it is Elliot going very, very wide. A little bit of contact between a Ferrari, I believe that's Mufasa and also Ports maybe coming together, and maybe potentially Brian as well. So both RBs in a bit of trouble at the back of the grid as they head then down the Wellington Straight into Luffield and Brooklands. So it is Manzanar Bob ahead then of Charlie Harris. What's happened there? Because Appledorm has lost a position to second place, then or to third place, and lost then a position on this opening lap of the race. And Manzanar Bob then heads through Cops for the first time, followed by the Red Bull of Neil, and then it is the two Mercedes-powered cars of then Dan and Gavin Poynton in the background. Gavin all over the back of the McLaren, in fact is going to go for a move around the outside. Down then the hangar straight, gets the move done by Gavin. That's a beautiful move. And I'll tell you what, where has Gavin's pace come from today? Because he's looking rapid. Oh no, Gavin is into the gravel. I'm not sure if he's in or out of this race. He's still managed to keep the car going. And yeah, he's had a very odd spin there. That truly, I would have to say, and apologise for the commentator's curse. I think that's the first ever time I've ever put the commentator's curse on someone, potentially. So I am going to apologise to Gavin for that. Anyway, back to the racing action. And Appledorm really struggling for pace. He's got actually a bit of wing damage. That might just explain the reason why. I didn't notice that wing damage before, but you can see missing clearly a front wing end plate there to the right, to the left side of his Haas car. So this is going to put him in an uncomfortable territory here, especially with Neil and Dan on his tail, and also the Ferrari driver of SCS and Shade. I'm not sure if he's got a bit of damage too. Yes, he does as well. So the Ferrari and the Haas both have got damage, at least inside this battle for third place at the moment, which certainly Neil's leading the charge, and Neil looking so much more comfortable with the DRS as well now enabled here then on this lap of the Grand Prix. Is Neil going to go for it? Yes, he is. Down the inside at Stowe, gets the move very easily done as we get to the corner, and it is then Neil ahead of his, well, ahead of the Haas driver. And for obviously for Appledorm, I do wonder, you know, what is going to be his strategy then here. Is he gonna just try and hang on and not get that wing replaced, or is he gonna maybe try and stop a bit earlier and get that wing replaced and try and undercut some of his rivals? What is gonna be his course of plan? Of course, he will probably be hoping for a safety car at some point in this race. That would certainly do him a bit of good. But again, Appledom does get back past the Red Bull. So Neil making a bit of an error there, which has allowed, obviously, Appledom just to sneak back up the inside. And that's going to be a bit of a frustration for Neil, because Neil is going to, of course, have to re-overtake here, as we see Top House Flogger and Has Nagel go side by side. This is a battle for P7. In the end, Has J Nagel manages to hold off the attack from Top Car Flogger, and Top Car Flogger then will get a shot of DRS down the straight, but he's going to have to be a bit wary because he's got also the car of JR Morgan in the background. Also, Elliot's managing to climb back up through the ladder and get himself back up into a more raceable position for some stronger points here today. Of course, all our drivers do score points, but of course you want to be in the sharper end of those points, especially to help your team and maybe even yourself in the standings at the moment. And we see Mufasa at the back of the grid then, at the tail end. So the current gap out front is Man's Not Bob with a 2-second advantage over then Charlie Harris. Then it is Appledom in third, 5 seconds behind the race leader at the moment. It is on the soft start top 3, so them drivers I do imagine will probably come into the pits around maybe lap 9, maybe around, well, between 9 and 11 I'm going to suspect. Maybe even a bit sooner than that, I'm not entirely sure, but certainly going to be coming in near that probably time during the race. In terms of medium runners, they're going to be going a little bit longer, and same with the hards, a lot longer. So still a lot of event and drama, I'm sure, to unfold as gaps are now beginning to open up, and Dandan looking a bit vulnerable despite his car looking all okay, especially in terms of like what's visibly on the car. He's not exactly flying away from obviously FCS and Shade, which is encouraging signs for FCS and Shade with that damage on his car, managing to keep up with the McLaren. Also, Appledom has managed to pull out a bit of a lead himself over the McLaren, and we see FCS and Shade pull off into the pits. Then there, with that damage, probably going to get a new front wing, and he's decided to stop now. So what is going to be his strategy, I'm not entirely sure. He's going to put on the mediums by the looks of it. Of course, I do suspect he's also taking a wing change here as well. So are we looking at a two-stop race, given these drivers have gone for soft tyres so early on? Potentially we could be. I'm not really too sure what to say. So that has promoted Top Car Flogger and Has J Nagel then onto the back of Dandan. And that might actually spark a bit more concern for Dandan here, because them drivers are looking maybe a little bit more raceable with their cars still all in one piece. So will they have an easier time getting past the McLaren driver? Of course, the McLaren is actually on hards. I should have said that actually, which is probably a little bit unfair to Dandan. That could explain why he's struggling a little bit in this early phase. So it might come a little bit back towards him, but I would have expected him maybe pulling away from the, obviously, the Ferrari with the damage. So Has J Nagel going for an overtake round the outside into the final few corners. In the end, it is then the McLaren with the better line. And in the end, actually, Has J Nagel almost compromised the Red Bull of Morgan there. And that's allowed then Top Car Flogger to come on through. So Top Car Flogger doing a brilliant job actually for Haas right now, has to be said, because, well, with his teammate facing a bit of jeopardy today, he needs to be there to try and pick up as many points and to try and help out the Haas team as best as possible. especially for their constructors' hopes for later on in this season. Right now, Aston Martin scoring very, very well. I'd say Haas are scoring well too. So is Sauber right now. Obviously, Haas do hold a 25-point advantage over the Sauber team. Then in the current standings, as it currently sits. So Morgan and Elliott still fighting. Elliott manages to get a move done. Is on medium tyres as well for good measure. So his tyre certainly is going to be starting to feel probably a little bit better than the soft tyre right now, as he tries to make his way back through the grid. Did see him in the early part of this race go for what you called it, a very early off-track excursion, as Morgan's actually managed to find his way back through then. So a little bit of a gap has actually opened up there between the Aston Martin and the Red Bull, which has probably helped then this lot fight a little bit better. But right now, what is P8 in the race then here? So Elliott's going to have a DRS on Morgan, as Morgan then going to have to focus on that exit so crucially and try and get a better exit, which I think he has. Probably going to be too far back for the RB driver to even consider move, as we make our way down the straight into Brooklands. And yep, indeed, you bet he is. However, this is a part of the track where Morgan can now stick closer to the back of the Red Bull driver, and obviously Elliott with now much more of a toe, that dirty air is going to affect him less, and it's less about the traction, just more about obviously being pulled along. And you can see how now obviously Elliott's closing and closing onto the back of the Red Bull through the corners then here. And you can see now how obviously Elliott has got within touching distance. So Elliott is going to probably be able to make a pass with the DRS now active down the inside at Stowe and gets the move done. But Morgan's going to be still there on the exit, so Morgan's not going to give up the position too easily. And that's then Elliott back past the Red Bull driver, and also Robbo going to have a look. Robbo almost pushing the Red Bull through the corners, as Robbo's going to go up the inside at turn 1, gets the move done. Lovely stuff then by the Williams to take the position away from Morgan, and very clean racing also by all three of them there, and very respectful, which is great stuff to see. So Man's Not Bob has now opened up a 5-second gap. Now that's very crucial, because Man's Not Bob can react a lap later to whatever Charlie Harris does. Man's Not Bob is in the driving seat here, really, really is. And he's just, well, I think unlike the previous races, unlike the races where he has been on pole and lost the race, he's decided today, I'm not going to mess about. I'm going to just get on with it and be laser focused today. And I feel like that's the attitude I'm sensing from Man's Not Bob. He's just cruising away from the field at the moment. No one seems to be able to lay a hand on him. As we see then, it is Appledorn getting back past the Red Bull Vanille. And for Appledorn, that's an encouraging sign. Also, Charlie Harris hasn't exactly pulled too far clear of then Appledorn either. And Charlie Harris doesn't have any damage that I can report on. So the gap's currently just over 3 seconds. So lap 9 of then 26. And I imagine stops are going to be coming soon for the soft runners. The soft does seem to be holding up though very, very well. Better than I probably anticipated here. As we see Dan then and Top Car Vlogger fight it out for what is P6 and P5 in the race. Then here, currently Top Car Vlogger behind the McLaren is on softs, but those softs are holding, as I said, very well. against the other compound of tyres. I would have thought at this stage the mediums and the hards would start to become a better tyre to be on, but clearly not necessarily. So Neil re-overtakes, then the Haas driver back onto the podium. He is. And also Dandan still ahead of top car Flogger. Elliott has now managed to get past, then has Jay Nagle for what is 8th place. Now can he pull away? Does have a penalty, and Charlie Harris has spun. Charlie Harris has spun then here, as we see the crowd applaud. Oh no, he hasn't spun. Okay, my apologies. Has he or hasn't he spun? I'm not entirely sure. It's saying he's 15 seconds off the race leader, which technically would put him ahead of, obviously, a few drivers, ahead of Elliott, but it says he's obviously, what you call it, still in P2. I don't understand that. I'm going to presume he's in P2, and that was just some sort of maybe glitch or lag. I'm not entirely sure. I have had it before at Silverstone. Silverstone always been a bit of a funny track for our commentary. For whatever reason, I don't quite understand it. I hope Charlie Harris hasn't spun, because would be very, very devastating for himself. But nonetheless, so Jay Nagle has been overtaken, and Robbo goes off the track there. So that's going to be a track excursion for the Williams driver, at least. Hopefully it does sort itself out now. As we see now, Appledorn peels off into the pits and is probably going to take that then pit stop and wing change at this stage of the race, I would have thought. Let's see if he does, and let's see what tyre he's going to go on to. I suspect it's probably going to be the medium tyre here, considering that we're almost at half race distance. Does he go on to mediums? Yes, he does. Changes that front wing, as you can see as well. Also, Brian into pits to make his stop as well, as I believe Gavin may have had a spin actually at the final corner. It is Gavin, so he's going to be rejoining the track. Does keep the car going. That's second spin, unfortunately, for him today. And I'm not saying his race is ruined, but his race does seem very compromised at this point. And not a good day for Mercedes right now, looking in very much not the greatest of places. So, nonetheless, the gap remains out front then for Charlie Harris at for Man's Not Bob about 5.5 seconds ahead of Charlie Harris. Then it's Neil in third. Dandan is in fourth. And Dandan now is starting to catch Neil here for what is fourth place, we can see in the background. As Robbo and Elliott still fighting out then for what is then 6th and 7th place, including also 8th. So battle for 6th then is on, as we see Robbo peel off into the pits, as then Jay Nagle continues on with obviously the Red Bull driver, the RB driver of Elliott. And Man's Not Bob also comes into the pits, puts on that medium, so does then Charlie Harris. Both of them coming in exactly at the same time in this race. Be interesting to see where is Appledorn in all of this. So Appledorn was obviously quite a distance ahead of Robbo, so he does get Robbo then. Does he get Top House Flogger, who don't think so. No, actually, sorry, Top House Flogger is then there. So what was the gap before? It was about between, I think, between Charlie and between obviously Appledorn. It was only a few seconds. It's, about 3, I'm going to say. It's now about 6 or 7. So that's good news for, obviously, Neil, given he knows the gap. But Neil is struggling on that medium tyre, to be fair. And that would be a bit of alarm of concern, actually, if you are Neil, because well, still Top Car Vloggers going strong, and there goes Dan Dan into the race lead on lap 12. So we've got now a new race leader once again. It is Dan Dan then up into first place, overtaking then Neil for what is then the race lead. And yeah, Neil really struggling with that pace. Okay, his tyres are probably reaching the pit stop window phase, but I would have expected that medium tyre to be holding up a little bit better than what it actually is. So pit stops are still commencing then here. Neil still choosing to continue on at least for another lap. Does have DRS though on his rivals. So Appledorn is a good thing for Appledorn. He is actually in clean air until at least he gets up to the back of Top House Vlogger. That's certainly gonna help him out a fair amount, being within that cleaner air. So he can just focus on doing consistent lap times. Also, Top Car Vlogger, he's probably a bit of a threat also to Neil. I'm not really sure what the pit loss is here. It's about maybe 25, 26 seconds. Maybe it's about 27. So I'm not really sure what the actual pit loss is around Silverstone. If someone wants to comment it in the comments, go ahead, feel free. I'm going to quickly read out any comments we got. Obviously, Iron Kid, stop picking on Mufasa. He knows he's in the mud. He doesn't need telling on stream. But nah, Mufasa's actually doing okay, I'm going to say. He's starting to recover. To be fair, a bit. Obviously, probably still not the race he would have won. But he still can come out in a decent position. And don't forget, he will be going on to the softer compound. So still, Neil continues on. And Neil, I think, is a little bit happier now because he's now got the DRS on Dan Dan. And I think that may just be helping him out just to stay at a bit more of a competitive pace. And in that, obviously, slipstream. So yeah, that's certainly probably helping out the Red Bull driver now a little bit. Using that, obviously, that slipstream effect to good use and good advantage as he heads through Maggots and Beckett's following the McLaren. Again, DRS active in what is now the battle for the lead. Of course, the current net race leader is here with only 13 seconds behind, and he's going to be a pit stop clear of then White Elliott. Then here for Aston Martin, looking very comfortable for Man's Not Bob today as Neil now comes into the pits. Now, this is obviously the battle for third, so where does Neil re-emerge? Puts on the soft tyre with 11 laps to go. So where is Neil going to come out? Is he going to be ahead of Appledorn, or is he going to be behind? Appledorn still making his way through the final few corners as he now makes his way onto the pit straight, and now it is going to be then Neil exiting the pits. This is going to be quite close on pit exit, but I think Neil is just ahead of then his rival, and indeed he is. So Appledorn is behind as we see St. Power then just also ahead, and Neil, well, it's probably crucial for Appledorn to try and make the pass immediately on the track here, and it's also crucial for Neil not to get past on the track also immediately. Neil is going to go for it, so is then Appledorn. A little bit of contact between St. Power and Neil there, but in the end nothing major between them. So here we go then, the battle for third, probably the closest battle in terms of 3 podium spots at the moment on the cards here. So is then, well, we know Dan Dan at least probably going to be ahead of his rival Top House Vlogger for 5th based on that evidence. So it's about a 27-second pit loss. So here we go then, and you can see also Neil trying to use a little bit of a defense in obviously Piano Jam, but that in the end didn't really work out for Neil, as Piano Jam, well, the DRS being a bit too effective for obviously Apeldoorn, and Apeldoorn manages then to get ahead of Neil, and that is crucial for his race then. And with now obviously a fully fixed front wing, let's see how this battle shapes up. But Neil does have the better tyre. It's about obviously 5 laps younger, or 4 laps younger. Also, it is a step softer, which for sure will be very much a beneficiary for the Red Bull driver. So Apeldoorn trying to break the toe. Has to be careful with the amount of weaving potentially going on there. Certainly something of which could get reported to the stewards if he does too much of that. Certainly, I think there was a little bit of weaving. Well, that time probably gets away with it, in my opinion, which is fair enough, but does have to be careful not to make it a, you know, a flagrant breach of the rules, I suppose, if you know where I'm coming from. So this probably going to be a little bit too much for the Haas driver to defend against on this occasion. Again, he will try and break the toe as much as possible, but in the end, obviously, DRS on this straight, near enough impossible to defend against, and that is now Neil up back into the net podium spot. Tell you who could be a threat actually for this podium fight, and it is Dandan. Dandan pace since obviously his pit stops been absolutely brilliant here. He's still, well, when he pits, he's probably going to be ahead of Top House Vlogger, going to be certainly ahead of Top Car Vlogger. So he's in a really, really good shape actually, and he isn't going to be too far off this pair of drivers whenever he does pit, and he's going to have much, much fresher tyres than the pair of them. So the offset for obviously Dandan is going to be greater than the offset what it was for Neil, and it's probably going to be greater than the offset for obviously Dandan himself. So yeah, Dandan is really giving himself a good offset and is still doing very good lap times, only 24 seconds ahead of this pair, which would put him now 3 seconds behind. So every single lap, obviously, Dandan does do. He does lose more time, but he does benefit through the fact he's going to have the far better tyre come the end of this race, which is going to be such a beneficiary for him. And Top Car Vlogger's pace, not really been that great, have to be said. I'm sorry to say. I don't really like criticising anyone, but it hasn't been that great, his pace on this medium set of tyres. On the soft, it was actually pretty good, but on the medium, it's not looking all that convincing, his pace here at the moment, especially compared to where his teammate currently is. His teammate's pulling in, obviously, better times. Elliott does now set the fastest lap, obviously is on a new set of softs, and a lap thrasher softs than obviously Neil, so that's certainly going to be well, I don't think that fastest lap is going to hold up, because we do have FCS and Shade who's just put on the softs now. Piano Jam is also on the softs, so I think them two drivers certainly could take away that fastest lap from Elliott. Also, we know Dandan is going to come into the pits at some stage today. Got to make his one mandatory stop. Now, again, for Dandan still looking very, very good in terms of his pace. And here, let's see if there's any further fights going on. Obviously, got a fight for right now. What is then 18th and 19th? 18th and 17th. St. Power versus FCS and Shade. Should be easy pickings for the Ferrari driver. The Sauber does go wide. So Dandan is into the pits now. He is going to come out about 7 seconds behind. We see the two leaders go through. or not two leaders, sorry, the two drivers for the podium battle go through. So he is actually, yeah, 3 seconds behind, so a lot less than what I said. So 3 seconds behind than there. And that's put him in great shape because his tyres are 8 laps younger than Appledorm's. They are 4 laps younger than Neil. That is excellent strategy by the McLaren driver of Dandan. So he's certainly going to be a real contender for the podium. Of course, the win a bit too far out of reach. But P3 well within his grasp. So, what is obviously the best result Haas can get today? I feel like the best result they can get is probably 4th and 6th at the moment. That is what it's looking likely then here. Obviously, Top Car Flogger is being slowly caught by the 2 cars behind him of Elliott and of Hans J. Nagel, but I do think probably 5th and 6th is a result where them 2 drivers have got to aim for now. Obviously, good news is for Top Car Flogger. The driver behind him does have a penalty, which we are going to go quickly through. So we'll go through the penalties. So, penalties for, obviously, the current grid are Elliott 3 seconds, then it is Morgan 3, same with Lange 3. Then it is Ports on 6, coming from the back of the grid though. Brian is on 13, so he's certainly going to drop down the order a fair chunk come the end of this race. Mufasa currently with none, same Piano Jam with 3. Then we got Same Power with 6. Then FCS and Shade with 3 and Gavin with 3. So, yeah, 2 Mercedes having a bit of a lonely race at the back of the grid then there. In fact, I think LCC is been lapped, has he? Yes, I believe he has. So LCC been lapped then. And I believe he's probably also getting lapped by a few other drivers. I'm not sure if he's a minute and 29 behind the leader. I think he is 20. That's where he is. Even though, no, he's got to be further behind. Because Man's Not Bob is... Well, there's Man's Not Bob. Gavin's... sorry, LCC's going down the Hangar Straight, isn't he? So, I don't know. He's quite far behind. That's all I can say. So, battle for third, still heating up every single lap we do as we come then into the closing phases of this race. Still no safety car today. So, that, of course, has been pretty decent news, I suppose, for our drivers, depending on what way you take it, of course. Given the no safety car makes it certainly a far faster race than what it would usually be. And I don't think we're going to get one, given we're entering the final lap. So, right, Appledorm's starting to come back at nil here. Certainly the closest he's been for a while. So, he's got the DRS for sure. Can he now get the move done? And probably a crucial move as well if he maybe wants any hopes of fighting for the podiums in the closing laps, as he now takes then the third place away from Neil. Little bit of contact between the two, just minor rear wheel to front wing going on there. Don't think neither would have picked up damage, certainly at least hopefully not for Neil. It would have been the main target, but Dandan is coming at them like a steam engine, and he's certainly got the pace. Fastest lap of the race as well. In fact, I tell you what, Dandan, I wouldn't mind him and his chances for even P2 here in this race if he can dispatch, obviously, Appledorm and Neil. quickly enough. As we see then Neil and Appledorn go side by side into Lovefield. It is going to be Neil with the inside line through Lovefield. Who's going to get the better exit? It's going to be Neil taking back the position in commanding style. As we see then, well, Dandan having to stick behind just for now. And this must be a bit of a frustration for Dandan, of course. He's got the better tyres. Clearly going to be then the quicker car. And it's just about, can he get past on the straights? But he is looking very close to the back then of the Red Bull driver and of the Haas driver. He's certainly going to get one of them into Stowe. Can he get the other? Not quite, not just yet. So he's going to get at least one. So that's one of the two down. And now it's just about getting, obviously, Appledorn for what will be here then third place in the race, as he will then also have about a 4-second gap or 5-second gap to make up to Charlie Harris. And what is there, 4 laps to go? That's very much doable. It's only, in fact, yeah, 4 or 5 laps to go. It is very, very much on the cards here, the battle for P2. So here goes Dandan. Down the inside, is he? No. Gonna stay behind just for now. However, he doesn't want to stay behind too much longer, because every single lap he allows, obviously, Appledorn to remain ahead. Just, obviously, decreases his chances in terms of getting Charlie Harris in the battle for P2. And he's through. But has he picked his timing right? Because obviously Appledorn is going to get the DRS back at him here, which could allow Appledorn back through. So here we're going to go. Is Appledorn close enough to make his way back past the McLaren driver? Yes, he is. He's going to come then back out the McLaren and takes P3 back off the McLaren driver of Dandan. And that's why Dandan needs to pick his timing better through that section of track. Ultimately, I think he's only got 2 overtaking opportunities on this track, if I'm being honest. And those 2 overtaking opportunities are down the Wellington Straight into Brooklands, and he needs to get the move done into Brooklands, or get it done down the Hangar Straight into Stowe, and then pull away. And he's looking almighty close to the back of then Appledorn. He's going to get the move then done down into Brooklands. And now, as I said, he needs to just pull away. That's his task, to not be stuck within this battle. Because, as you can see, he's got the better grip. However, that certainly helps out Charlie Harrison there for at least the battle for second place. But still, I would fancy Dandan and his chances of getting it. And as you can see, he's pulled out now that 1 second advantage, which obviously he needs to remain, obviously, a better threat to Charlie. And now he can go start chasing Charlie Harris, even though Appledorn does have the DRS. But in the end, this sector, this is where Dandan is going to benefit from those fresher tyres, from that better tyre. And for, obviously, Dandan, he's going to also gain a lot on Charlie each and every corner. So let's see, can he do it? 2 laps to go, still very much in the balance. He does need to probably gain about 2-3 seconds on this lap alone in order to have a chance. But there is a chance there. And I'm not going to say there isn't. We're going to keep an eye on then Dandan's potential chance of P2. Currently gap's now 12.4. 3 seconds is the gap then. Is it going to be close enough? As I say, probably would need to be within about 2 seconds come the end of this lap. It's going to be very, very close, whether or not he's within that margin. Currently now the gap's about 2.5. Dandan's also managing to pull a little bit of a gap also through those higher speed corners. So you can see the McLaren chase down then the Sauber for what is then P2 in the race. Gap's now roughly 2.5 still. It's just creeping under that 2.5 region. I think Charlie Harris probably going to be safe enough. Unless basically Dandan is able to pull 2 seconds within the next sector and a half. So we'll go back then to the battle for fourth. Because this battle, well, whilst the battle for second might be just about settled, the battle for fourth certainly isn't. So can Appledorm hang on to fourth place? I know it probably isn't the result he wants, but he's certainly got a great opportunity here to hang on to that fourth place and score at least the maximum points he probably could take out after that damage of this race. So we're going to go back to then the race leader, who is coming through Maggots, Beckett and Chapel now, and heading down the the Hanger Straight then for the final time into Stowe, as he then starts to put on a bit of a dance for the cameras. And it is going to be a victory for Man's Not Bob at the British Circuit of Silverstone. As he rounds in the final few corners, he's dominated this race in great style. It's Man's Not Bob winning in Silverstone as he zigzags to the line. Man's Not Bob takes the victory. Charlie Harris is going to hang on to then P2. It is going to be Danlan in third. Fourth is going to be Appledorm taking great haul of points nonetheless. Neil fifth. Then it's Top Car Flogger managing to come home in sixth place. And that's actually a good result for Haas today, despite a little bit of damage limitation there in sixth. Seventh is going to be Elliott. Then it's going to be Haas in then eighth. Then it's Port's ninth. As he rounds the final corners now ahead of Morgan. No, Morgan's going to jump up ahead of Port's. Lange in then 12th. Port's in fact tumbling down the order. 10th is then Flogger. Port's 11th, then Lange. Then it's Mafasa. Brian's going to probably head down the order too. 14th is then FCS and Shade. Then Robbo 15th. Wow, how many seconds of penalties did Brian get? St. Power then is going to take 17th after Gavin's had another spin on his final lap there, unfortunately. That certainly isn't great for him. So Gavin 18th then. And we're just waiting on then Piano Jam to come across the line, who is, I believe, ghosted. So I think he may have left the session at some point or whatever. I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, we're just waiting on then Piano Jam, who crosses the line now and takes the position. Now I think have been a little bit of a, what you call a glitch due to the order or whatever, due to Dandan I think leaving, I think it was Dandan or someone leaving a bit early. But nonetheless, it was a good race. Maybe a bit, could have been maybe a bit dramatic, especially after the first lap. Would have been nice to see maybe a few closer battles. Certainly not going to be the most memorable race, obviously, for Appledorm. He won't care two shillings, as they say. He will obviously, be very delighted at the victory he got with taking almost a 10-second victory over his rival. But yeah, as I say, for me, probably a little bit of a lackluster event, unfortunately. But there was some good battles out there between, obviously, Appledorm nil. Also, Dandan in the end coming back through the field was good. Anyway, go through the final order. So, Man Not Bob with the victory. Then it is Charlie Harris and Dandan in third. Fourth is then Appledorm. Fifth is Neil. Sixth is then Top Car Flogger. Then it's Elliot in seventh. Nagel is in ninth. And then it is Morgan ninth. Ports in 10th. Lange is in 11th. Mafasa 12th. FCS and Shade 13th. 14th is Robbo. 15th is Brian. 16th is St. Power. 17th we have Gavin. Then 18th we have Piano Jam. And then 19th we have Top House Vlogger, followed by LCC in 20th, unfortunately, and last. So, who's my driver of the day? I'm going to probably say my driver of the day, just my personal pick. I'm going to give it to either Manzanar Bob or Dan Dan. I think them two are, well, they deserve it equally much. Dan Dan for his drive through the field, brilliant, and a brilliant strategy I think he selected there. And also, Manzanar Bob dominated that race in superior fashion. And yeah, excellent work, and I think he'll be very pleased because, you know, after, well, a few races this season, he's qualified on pole, and it's all turned to disaster, but today he's put things right, and he's managed to pick up the victory, so he'll be very, very happy with that. Anyway, until the next race, see you all next Monday for another round number 8 of ERL. Have a great week, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please do make sure you do leave a like and subscribe to the channel of ERL, and that would be very much appreciated. See you all next week for another round.